Hi everyone, I hope you're well, thanks for clicking on the video. I just got done watching episode 2 of The Last of Us. Holy shit, let's just get it started with this. It's another 10 out of 10 episode, it was amazing. They kept it as true to the video game as possible really in a lot of ways, which is something I continue to really like about The Last of Us. I'm so glad that they've decided to do it that way, because coming into watching this show, that's something I worried about. It was really important to me that they kept it as true to the video game as possible, and they seem to be doing that. Of course, the storyline does vary from the video game, but for the most part, it seems as though the ways in which they've changed it is just a lot of added extra context to the story that we already loved, right? Which is something I don't understand about why people would complain. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, they have this story that they can now flesh out in a whole new way via this series, and they can now give us that extra context that they couldn't in the video game. So again, I don't understand why you would complain about that, even if it is different than the game. The ways in which they have changed the story, I can honestly say for the most part, I feel as though it is for the better. Like Tessa's death, for example, that happens entirely different than in the video game, but I actually feel as though her death was now more impactful. They had me thinking she was going to get torn apart by the infected for a minute. That would have been horrendous. That would have really hurt my feelings if they decided to do that to the character. But that's just one example, right? Another way in which they decided to change the story a little bit, which actually took me off guard, this was something that perhaps I actually felt was maybe even unnecessary, was the whole getting Ellie bitten for a second time. I do kind of get it as to why they did it, right? Like, it kind of makes it now so that when Tess reveals her bite mark, she now has that comparison to Ellie's bite mark, which is equally as fresh, and it really helps the viewer to understand what they're dealing with here in terms of Ellie being immune and how important that is to the storyline. I really enjoyed all the insight they gave us as well, to do with cordyceps, and how like this fungi is actually interconnected and it can communicate with itself from like different parts of the fucking world as far as I'm concerned, right? Like, if you stand on one part of these tetrils, I think they've decided to call them, at least that's what it was referred to leading up to the release of the HBO show. I think they're called tendrils or something like that. But if you stand on one of those, it can alert like a pack of infected in another location. So that's something, again, that's also different from the original story, but something that adds a whole new flavour to the storyline, right? Like, that's something else we have to worry about now. While they're on the screen as well, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about our first scenes with the clickers. It was absolutely terrifying. I actually came into this episode with a lot of confidence, knowing that Neil Druckmann was the director and that he would actually handle these moments perfectly, and he absolutely did. I'm not one of these guys who has all this pent-up hatred for Neil Druckmann. I actually think he's a big key factor in why I loved The Last of Us the first time I watched it, and he handled this episode absolutely perfectly. And like I said, the clickers, our first interaction with them, was so riveting, it was so intense, and it was handled in a way that I feel like only Neil Druckmann could have done. Also, I'm so glad they decided to do the Lord of the Rings method, right? They didn't lean into the CGI too soon in the show. They decided to go with, makeup and props, right? And that's why the clickers look as fantastic as they do, because they didn't go too balls to the wall with the CGI. I hate it when movies do that. That's why Lord of the Rings looks fantastic even to this day. It's aged so well. And I'm looking forward to that being the case with The Last of Us too, hopefully, because I look forward to the day I can show my kids this show and I don't want them laughing at shitty CGI, because it will be shitty in 20 years time, you know what I mean? CGI just doesn't age well, unfortunately, right? Technology advances so fast. But for now, guys, that brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more Last of Us content. If you have any thoughts and opinions on the episode, please leave a comment down below, and I'd love to get back to you when I have the time. Thanks, guys.